Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Captain's Quarters, the unofficial Star Trek Rewatch Podcast, where we are rewatching the entire Star Trek chronology, starting at the beginning of the timeline and working our way all the way through. We have finished all of Enterprise, the first two seasons of Discovery until they jump way into the future. And because of that, we are departing Discovery and we are starting what is the beginning of Strange New Worlds, which canonically is the cage. Although, Jason,
Yes,
not to break your heart or any of our
yes.
listeners' hearts. By the way, I'm with my co-captain Jason. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing great.
Sick.
Can I, before we get started,
Yeah,
I just want to quote Captain Kirk just for a second here.
yeah.
My friend, we've come home. We've come home.
Nice.
The original series. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah. Set your phases for fun. Um, hey, so here's the deal. So it makes sense that we are watching The Cage because when we start Strange New Worlds, Captain Pike is the captain of the Enterprise. He's going to have all his adventures. When we did Into the Mirror, no, that's way off.
Wait,
Um,
wait. Whoa, whoa,
there's
whoa,
a
whoa, whoa.
there's an
Are we talking
episode
about
that
Discovery?
no Discovery, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh.
there that ignore what I just said, but there's an episode that we did on this podcast back in
Yes,
July
yes,
where Spock uses the Telosians
yes, yes,
to
yes,
project
yes,
his memories of the murder incident to Michael.
yes,
Um, that episode starts with flashbacks of the cage. So the cold
yes.
open is the cage. So it makes sense that we're doing the cage now,
Yeah,
but here's the deal, Jason. Discovery season two ends in the year 2256,
yeah.
and the cage takes place in 2254. So
Okay. Yeah, okay.
technically, we should
Yeah.
have watched the cage before we did Discovery.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
No,
if someone
I,
wants to be really pedantic, they could call us out on that,
yeah,
but I do still think it makes sense that we're doing it this way.
yeah, I do too. And yes, someone's probably going to be a handful of people that will say, "Wait, wait, wait, whoa, 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 whoa! You guys should have stopped before, uh, before that episode that you referenced because we find out Pike has already met Vina, and they've already been to Talos 4. Yeah."
Right.
No, and I think I mentioned that while we were doing the episode, but I was like, well, I think
Yeah.
it's just like, well, it
And
can you
we're
put can you put like the pilot like in between two disco episodes? It feels weird. I don't know.
it does. Yeah, it does feel weird. And we're kind of splitting hairs.
Yeah.
And you could almost make the argument that almost, I'm not saying we will or you should, but you could
No.
almost make the argument that the cage is not, it doesn't kind of fit into what we're doing, because what we're doing is we're tackling a whole
Yeah.
series,
Yeah.
and the cage is this weird standalone
Yeah.
thing
It is.
that probably wasn't even considered canon by most people until it was like way later.
Well, it wasn't canon until Star Trek season 1 or 2, and it's called the Menagerie. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, apologies if
And actually, I'm sorry, buddy, but
yeah.
you and other folks could actually make that it's not it's loose canon because of certain things that happen, certain characteristics of certain people. Spock. You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Well, here is maybe the briefest of synopses I've
sure.
ever done via fandom.com. All it says is when the Enterprise answers a distress call, Captain Pike encounters manipulative aliens.
Ooh.
And that's all it says.
Ooh.
So, as we know,
Manipulative. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
as we know, this was the original pilot. And it ended up not being the pilot that they went with for the original series. And so here's what it says on fandom. It first aired in 1988. So it never aired originally, apparently. It was
Really?
yeah. So,
That I didn't know.
and this is very surface level research on fandom.com. I haven't dug into all the production and the history, and there's stuff like
Yeah.
that I wanted to ask you. I'm just telling
Yeah,
you
yeah,
right
yeah,
now,
yeah,
like
yeah,
at the
yeah,
at
yeah.
the top of the article for fandom, it
Yeah,
says
yeah, yeah,
first
yeah. No, no,
first
no.
aired October 4th, 1988.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then it was remastered May of 2009.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know, man. Um,
Okay, that makes
yeah,
sense. That makes sense.
uh,
Like that NBC got to see the pilot, thought it was boring, too cerebral, too long, not enough action, but had enough that they gave Gene Roddenberry the second chance to
yeah,
go where no man has gone before. Yeah, that makes sense.
for sure. So basically, Captain Pike, they're on the Enterprise. We
Mm.
we start right in the middle of the action. They are looking at the screen that is in front of the bridge. They're getting a bunch of distortion, and they're basically saying, "Hey, we're going through a radio wave. The wave is a distress call, and it's like whatever 18 light years away. So that means this signal came 18 years ago. Pike is determined to go to Vega Colony to heal some of his crew who were injured. I believe at Rigel 7,
Yeah.
which is something I want to ask you about in a second. But he's like, no, our our crew's more important than this. They're probably dead. The signal's old. But then the signal is more specific and it's a distress call. So then fine. They go to Talos, they land, they find what they think is a human colony. I believe it was the Columbia is what they thought it was. And
Yep. SS Columbia. Yep.
yeah, yeah, and they meet some like tribesmen who have been apparently on this planet. They also meet Vina, who is a woman who is there as well. Very quickly, strange things start to happen. The Telosians, who we've met before in that episode I was talking about, and possibly once in Enterprise, which is another thing I need to talk to you about too. They have these big
Did we? Oh man. Okay. Oh jeez.
they have these big heads with these throbbing veins. They're very cerebral. They have telepathy. They have the ability to project um, mirages, or what would you call it, like
Illusions. Illusions.
illusions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so not only can they read your mind, they can make your mind see things that aren't really there. And
Yeah.
so they capture Pike, just Pike, and the rest of the crew is like trying to break him out. They can't blast through the Telosians' wall. Yeah. And so they the rest of the crew goes back up to Enterprise. Spock and the crew start to experience their own illusions. Uh, Enterprise starts to shut down. They lose control of the ship. They lose power.
Yeah.
Spock basically says, well, because at this point Spock is in charge. He has command because Pike's out of commission. Spock basically says, we have to save the ship and the rest of the crew. So we're basically going to abandon Pike.
Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. So you
And
jumped a
this
little
is
bit.
Yeah, no, this is after the
Number
women.
one.
Number
This is
one, yeah,
by this time.
yeah,
Number one and the Yeoman have been have been also captured.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So the yeoman and number one go down. They try to beam down. For some reason, only the women go down. Well, I know why, but so the Telosians, we find out that they're creating like a zoo. Basically, they're very interested in other creatures, and basically, what's happening is they're trying to get Pike to mate with Vina, and
Mhm.
then their offspring will basically repopulate Talos 4, and
Yeah.
they call them Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
And they try to make it like comfortable for Pike and Vina. They create illusions of Pike's home city, Mojave, I believe it was,
Yeah.
with horseback riding and a beautiful park. And like they're basically like setting them up on dates. And Vina
Yeah.
is she's bought into this idea that they should mate. And Pike is kind of like asking her to question it, like, hey, don't you think this is wrong? Like, just because they're saying we should do it, like, does doesn't mean we should do it. It's weird. It's not right. And so, through the course of the episode, Pike discovers that they can't control his mind if he's in like an agitative emotional state. And so he
Yeah.
sort of forces
Primitive human
himself,
state. Yep.
yeah,
Absolutely.
he
Yeah. Mm.
forces himself to be aggressive. And eventually he figures out that there's so many illusions that even when number one and the yeoman come down, they bring blasters with them, but the illusions are so complete that like when they shoot the blasters, the phasers, whatever, they can't see the effect of it. But Pike, because he's Pike, he's smart, he's outsmarting the Telosians. He says, um, you made me think that like I didn't blast a hole in this, but I did. And at the same time, he's like strangling one of the Telosians
Yeah.
and threatening him and saying, I'm gonna kill you unless you let us out.
Yeah.
Um, and through the course of that, the Telosians basically say humans are not as controllable as we thought. We've
Yeah.
learned that from like observing you, and we don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And so they basically let them go. And at that time, it's revealed that Columbia did, when Columbia did crash, Vina was one of the survivors. She was maybe the only survivor. And she was
Yeah.
like mangled, and they put her back together. But this like beautiful version of her was an illusion, and her true self kind of is revealed. And but now that they've observed Pike and the other crewmen, now they know what an actual human looks like, and so
Yeah.
now they're going to like remake Dina appropriately, because when they put her back together before, they didn't have a reference point, and now they do. And so apparently that's their promise to them, and they also give her like a projection of Pike so that she has companionship.
Yeah.
And that's and then they let Pike go. He gets back in the Enterprise. That's the gist of the broad strokes.
Yeah. Except for one thing, and I do want to point this out. And great job, by the way. This is just adding. No,
Sure.
I just want to add. So the
Yeah.
reason there are a couple of things, but the reason the Telosians let them go is because number one sets the phaser to overcharge and become an explosive device, sacrificing the yeoman, Captain Pike, and number one herself, instead
Yeah.
of instead of being a prisoner in a cage like an animal, like a zoo animal. They'd rather die. And the Telosians come to the conclusion that humans' capacity for freedom and not to be shackled um and not to be contained and even the Telosian said, even in the most, you know, peaceful, serene, you know, home setting, you know, comfortable setting, it is still not enough that they are, you know, it's still a reason. It's not enough for their, you know, for the replacement of humans, a human person's freedom. Um, and so yeah, and that's why they're let go.
Yeah, and the Telosians are they're the antagonists. They are not great. Their things they're doing
Yeah,
you would describe as evil, and um they're the bad guys. But it's interesting that we've met them later
interesting.
and they weren't that way. And I do
Yeah,
think it's interesting that this episode explains why that is, because they then changed their ways, or at least their um their dealings with humans.
yeah,
And I just thought that was pretty cool. That because when this episode first started, I was like, oh, like these Telosians, they're freaking, they're straight up evil.
yeah, yeah,
How
yeah,
how,
yeah,
how could they be so friendly with Spock, etc. later?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Um, but what you just said is the reason why
yeah,
they kind of reflected on what they were doing, and they were coming from the point of like, how could you not want this? We're creating this utopia for you,
yeah,
and um,
yeah.
yeah. So I thought that was pretty
Well,
cool.
I mean, and this is the part of Star Trek that I really love, and it's when and because they give you a good reason. It's not they're evil because they're evil. It's because Talos 4 was a warp capable, intelligent society, and for something a conflict happened and a nuclear uh war catastrophe decimated the planet, which forced these Telosians to live underground, you know, huddling with one another by themselves, you know, and I guess from evolution they developed this telepathy and stuff. And the reason that they give that, I mean, it's not great, but they want a class. This basically they want a caste society where they have humans to reproduce and become a slave kind of society, and a slave society to kind of rebuild uh Talos 4 because there's so few Telosians themselves. And then the end game is that they evolve just like the Telosians. And it's basically the Telosians trying to like, because there's so few of them left, they need, it's the survival of the species basically.
Hmm.
And while it's not right, obviously, you know, to one, you know, capture and keep, you know, um others in a zoo or in a cage or in enslavement, but it gives them, and I'm not defending it, but it gives them much more of a human, like a much more relatable, like a relatable, um, a much more relatable, um, kind of story, not a justification, but a reason of why they're doing these, of why they're trying to do this.
Right. But then them, their dealings with Pike and Number One and the Yeoman
Yeah,
gives them a different perspective and some empathy,
yeah,
and it's an evolution for them, and they they evolve.
yeah.
They're um
It's a cruel lab experiment, basically.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. For sure.
And again, I'm not trying to justify their means. I'm just saying they weren't written so that they're evil just because they're evil. They're written because their survivability depends on something like this.
right. And but we don't learn that until the end. At first
To the
they're
very,
just
very end. Yep. Yep. To the
they're
very, very end. Yep.
at first they're just kidnappers.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, they're zookeepers.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Waiting for the tiger or the panda to procreate.
right. So a lot of cool stuff with this episode. Particularly for me as someone who's still relatively new to Star Trek.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm not so sure about if you can say that anymore. I mean,
well,
you know,
so
yeah,
yeah, someone who's just not accustomed to the old school stuff like you are,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but like right out of the gate, there's just so many references,
yeah,
you know, when they're analyzing Talos 4, right away they talk about the M class planet, which is
yeah,
something that comes up all the time in Star Trek,
yes.
in which basically is like Earth like, it can sustain life that humans
Oxygen
can tolerate.
atmosphere. Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah. And, you know, when Pike he's debating on like what to do, and he just wants to go to Vega Colony. His chief medical officer says something like, well, why don't we go to Orion and you can get, um I don't know what he says, like a pleasure,
Yep,
like a pleasure slave, or I don't know what he says, but
yeah,
um I that reference I got because, in Enterprise we went to Orion and we saw the like market where they were selling slaves and stuff like that,
yeah,
and they were green, and because I think Dr. Boyce says something like that, like you can get a green Orion or something, like
yeah,
basically he's like telling Pike that he needs R&R. And
yep. And
and,
now
and
you're tired. You're damn right I'm tired.
yeah.
Damn right I'm
uh,
tired. Tired
and
of.
then it's hilarious, he pulls out his medical kit and it looks like he's making like a tincture or something, or
No, yeah, no,
some
he's
sort of
making a
medicine,
cocktail, buddy. He's
and he
making a
makes him a
cocktail. He's making a
cocktail.
drink. Yeah.
Pike's like, why do you have ice? He goes, well, do you want a cold cocktail, or whatever he says, or do you want a warm cocktail?
Yeah.
uh so I thought that was funny. Like I thought stuff like that was like really interesting, in that they added stuff like that to it, that it had that campiness and that humor,
Yeah.
and that was established from the very get-go.
Yes.
So I thought that was awesome. And who is the actor who plays Pike?
His name is Jeffrey Hunter.
Jeffrey Hunter.
Yeah.
Did he go on to do anything? Because he was kind of excellent.
He went on to do movies in the 60s. But unfortunately, he died pretty young.
Okay.
I think he died pretty young. Yeah.
I really liked him. I thought he was awesome.
Okay, yeah. You jumped ahead of me. I had some discussion of like, what'd you think of the episode and Pike and
Yeah.
number one and
Yeah.
all, yeah.
I mean, granted, I haven't watched the original series more than just in passing, but I'm surprised that he wasn't their guy. Like I thought he was really good, and his presence on screen and just everything about him. I was like,
Well, he decided not Jeffrey Hunter decided that he wanted to do movies. And
okay,
and they were forced into a corner. And I- and I think the network also, actually, I don't quote me on this, but I think the network at NBC said we want somebody else in the captain. You know, someone,
sure,
more good looking, action oriented, all that kind of stuff. But there was also, so I'm not entirely certain, but I think the studio and then Jeffrey Hunter also said I want to do other things.
makes sense. And I was also surprised at how long the pilot was. It was an hour,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
yeah, it's seemed really ambitious.
Yeah,
and and
yeah,
and like so much of it seemed to wait like ahead of its time. Just some of the sciencey stuff that they threw in there,
yes,
I thought was just really ambitious and ahead of its time. Um,
yeah,
Obviously, I didn't grow up in the '60s, so maybe I'm way off base. But
yeah,
just just the all of like kind of the science stuff they put into it, I I'm surprised that they knew that people would totally connect with that stuff because like we hadn't
yeah.
even landed on the moon yet at that point.
Yeah,
Uh,
nope, not yet. Yep, that's right. We were working on it.
mhm.
Sputnik wasn't a thing, and Gemini and the Apollo program was definitely a thing in the 60s. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We haven't landed on the moon yet. But we are
Yeah,
in the space race at this time.
yeah, I mean, they're talking about artificial gravity and they're talking about, going through the radio waves and um, just all of it. Just
Yeah,
like when I watched it with from that perspective, I was just really impressed. And then I was going to ask, I assume when they remastered it in
yeah,
2009, they
yeah,
CGI'd some stuff,
yeah,
particularly the opening shot.
yeah. So
When,
if you so we both watched it on Paramount Plus.
yeah,
The Enterprise, the whole yeah, mostly the Enterprise, and the orbiting of the planet. Really nothing else. Like they probably upgraded like the visuals of like the planet. I think they made the flower more blue. I think they added blue. I think they changed the color of the flower, the buzzing flowers
yeah,
into blue. But there it, my what I'm trying to say is like they did not George Lucas it and like add so many,
sure,
so many
sure,
different things. It was
yeah.
just an upgrade to the ship, to the Enterprise, obviously, on the outside, and then orbiting the planet, and then some of the planet stuff.
They didn't add a god awful Cy Snoodles musical
Yeah,
break.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. They didn't, plug in, a bantha, a womp, a wampa or whatever the case might be, walking around
Hmm.
as soon as they, before they beam down or whatever. No, they didn't do that. No, they just
Yeah,
made
it
visual upgrades.
makes sense. And then like the music, I don't know if you'd call it the theme song, that was a banger. And I've heard
Yeah,
that
yeah,
before.
no, yeah, yeah, I know. I think that would
Has
have been a classic if they kept that one. I think that would have been a
has
classic for sure.
has that been used elsewhere? That song? That like
It's
sort of
kind
jazzy.
Yeah, it's kind of hinted in Strange New World. It's like it's hinted, but not like in that sense. There's
Okay.
elements of it in Strange New Worlds.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a great song.
Yeah.
And I've heard it before. I don't know where, but I've heard it.
Oh, okay. 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 I'm curious if they've used it elsewhere. I'm sure.
And then even throughout the episode, there's this, magnificent score that's playing the whole time. I mean,
Yeah.
it was basically a movie, to be honest.
Huh. Yeah.
An
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
hour, an
Yeah.
hour long movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was and actually there were like I've heard rumors that the cage was kind of could have been set up for the motion picture. I could be lying, but an expanded idea of it could have was going to be something for the motion picture instead of what we got. And there were elements of the cage that go into um the motion picture, but yeah, no, it's absolutely cinematic in a lot of ways. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Very cool.
But at the same time, I think we also have to admit it's a little, there are moments of like where it's a little slow, even for 1960s, a little, and this is what like, a lot of people have said it's too slow, not enough action, too cerebral. People like,
Interesting.
you have to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. I mean, I could see why people would say that,
Yeah.
but I was entertained throughout.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Like I thought, like I said, I thought all the concepts were interesting. I was surprised at how advanced it was,
Yeah.
and I'm sure extremely influential.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
this was 13 years before Star Wars came out. Like
Yeah.
I can't imagine that Lucas wasn't heavily influenced by stuff like this.
Oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. Huh. I've never thought of that. That he might have that you as a fan, a bigger fan of the other franchise, that you would kind of make some connections there.
Hmm.
Interesting. Interesting.
But even that they added like ideas of the Orion slave girls or whatever, like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
fact that
okay.
it was multi-dimensional, and it wasn't just like a bunch of like mute aliens or whatever. Like they
Right.
had this idea of like different components of society but just scattered across the galaxy.
Yeah.
And I just think that's really interesting because we would just take that for granted now when we watch sci-fi, like
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
fact that
Yeah.
there's a Vega colony where there's a medical community, and then
Yeah.
there's Orion, and then there's um, they landed on a planet, but the planet wasn't. It was a society that was post-apocalyptic,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
it just took a ton of imagination to have that kind of world building,
Yeah.
and that we start in the middle of the action with on the Enterprise, but then also in the middle of these Telosians um, trying to reboot their society, like just
Right.
all that stuff.
Right.
I just
Which
thought it was
is
really
interesting,
cool.
that you point that out, because it's one of the things that Star Trek kind of has gotten criticized for a little bit, that, you know, a lot of the storytelling before it was very much, oh, oh, it's a Klingon story. Oh, it's a Romulan story again. Where are the Telosians? Where's the Rigelians, the Andorians, and where's the others? And, as a fan of the and not a criticism, but one of the many celebratory things about Star Wars is what you're talking about, right? And that's, so many aliens, so many worlds
Right.
in the Star Wars universe.
Because I do think most people would write it such that you go to a place and you encounter a
Mm.
a race of aliens and their society,
Yeah.
and you would just be like encountering the society and not really like applying real world morals and dilemmas to them.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact that they're touching on this like slavery thing in this one, I feel like that was just really took a lot of imagination, and I liked it a lot. And I'm
Awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
surprised it didn't have legs, to be honest.
I'm sorry.
I'm surprised it didn't have legs, to be honest. Like,
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
I'm
Okay.
glad I'm glad here we are, 60 years later,
Yeah.
getting Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
But from what little I know about Captain Kirk, I like this Pike guy better.
Okay. 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 Yeah, 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 yeah.
Maybe I'll change my mind when we start on the original series. I don't know.
Okay. 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 And the thing, and as much as great as Jeffrey Hunter was, um, I mean, the reason we've gotten Strange New Worlds, you have to give credit to Anson Mount. He's taken the character and just taken it to a whole nother level. And I'm glad
Yeah,
they've gotten a chance. And he is a fantastic Captain Pike for sure.
right. Also, although big criticism,
Yeah.
and I'm aware that is a sign of the times, it is very misogynistic.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
Oh yeah. 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 No. 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 Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 There are so many. So Star Trek, like in a lot of things, it is two steps forward, one step back. Um,
sure.
you know, um, there are so yeah, it is incredibly misogynistic for sure. Um, and I'm not going to defend it, but I do think, and I try to apply this in my life now. Um, it it was acceptable then. Not to say that we shouldn't look at it critically and be critical of it.
Hmm.
Um, and learn from it. But I try not to use a 21st century lens on a 20th century norm, if you will.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, because and here and I'm not and here is why I say that. Like for you and me, and in a very small example, like when we go back, I don't know, 20 years ago when we were in college, let's say, or 10 years ago, we wrote a paper and you read it now. It- okay, so like when we were in college, you're like, oh man, I'm proud of this, right? This is a great written paper. It's well researched, it's well documented. I've got, there's notes on it. I've got sources. It's well sourced, all that kind of stuff. Now we go back and you're like, what the hell is that? Right? You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
for sure.
We
Yeah.
have to always look at it from the perspective of the time, because even in this conversation right now, who's to say in 20, 30, 40 years you and I go back and listen to these podcasts and we're like, we wouldn't say that now, or we wouldn't use
Hmm.
that language now, or whatever the case might be.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm not, and again, it's not trying to apologize to a franchise that I love. I'm absolutely critical, of it when we see it now, and absolutely it's misogynistic. Um, but yeah, no, I try to use that. I try to apply that to in my life now. That
For
we
sure.
that yeah, we're critical of it, but it has its place, right?
Yeah. And specifically, what we're talking about is when the yeoman comes on board.
Yeah,
Pike basically is surprised that it's a woman, but he also says something like, "I'm just not used to women being on the bridge."
yeah.
And
And number one turns around and
number one
except
turns
for you, number one.
right, but
Yeah.
then he says something to the effect of like, you're basically a man or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, no, no. I completely agree. I was like, oh, no, no, mm-mm. And the way
Those
he
weren't.
tre- and the way he
Yeah.
tr- and the way he treats them,
Yeah. Yep.
except for number one, the way he treats Vina, the way he treats, the yeoman, is just,
Right.
you're like, yeah, yeah,
And at one point, one of the crewmen calls her sir.
yeah,
I think he says ma'am at first. He was like, sorry, sir. And
yeah.
so, like, even though she was on the bridge, they made it a point to like say,
Actually,
like,
in the
treat her
chain
like
of
a man.
command, even women with a higher rank have been and can be called sir in many instances.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
didn't know
instead
that.
of ma'am or
You're
captain
the
or
one
whatever the case may be.
who's yeah, okay. You're the maritime expert. I'm just yeah, I don't know, man. I believe you.
Yeah.
That's Yeah, that's new to me, but I believe you.
Yeah.
So, um,
Not
yeah,
always, but yeah. It's like, yes, Captain. Yes, sir.
got it. Hmm.
Even in a,
Uh,
yeah.
were there any females on the hunt on the Red October, Jason?
No,
Okay,
unfortunately not. No.
okay, all right. So, minus the misogyny,
Yes.
thought it was a great episode.
Yes.
Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed many aspects of it. Um, and yeah, loved it. Can't wait to
I mean,
watch more.
there was enough action for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. 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 Okay.
I I mean he chokes out one of the
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Tillagens.
Yeah. Yeah. He chokes the keeper. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the demonstration of their arms when they're blasting the rock of the wall. I thought that was innovative and cool, and um that was action enough. That's all the action I need. I don't
Okay.
need,
Okay.
I don't know. I guess I don't need action. I don't know.
Okay. Because it
Yeah.
was one of the criticisms that like it wasn't a shoot 'em up, you know, not. I mean, there was a little bit, but not that much.
Interesting. Yeah, because we tend to think of like society skewing more violent now.
Yeah.
So I can see why maybe you wouldn't want that now, but um I'm surprised back then that was also a demand.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They
Hmm,
love. It's one of the criticisms that Star Trek doesn't have enough space battles and ship battles and like in Star Wars.
sure. Yeah. Yeah, but like so much of the space battle stuff in Star Wars, they had to invent like ways to shoot it and to do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I
I
gotta
mean,
imagine on this budget with this technology, it was
yeah.
probably damn near impossible to have a space
Yeah.
battle.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. And the innovate and let's not and I want to touch on that just real quick. The innovation that George Lucas had. Don't move the ship. Don't move the ship around the camera. Move the camera. Leave the ship
Yeah,
like in one spot on a pole and move the camera around the ship. That's you know, that was
yeah, hmm,
incredibly innovative.
for sure.
Because then you're not hanging the Enterprise on a string and
Right, right. Which my stepdad used to always tell me that in Star Trek, you could see the string holding the Enterprise up.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, yeah.
clearly that was part of the remaster, whatever they did to this
Yes,
one. They got rid
yes.
of that. So
A little bit, a little bit. It's still at an angle, but it's still at that angle, but you don't see the string, obviously. But yeah.
and see, I would argue that the the creators of this episode were aware of lulls because, for instance, when they were warping to Talos, they made it like they started playing the theme song and they
Oh
made it
yeah,
interesting and they didn't want to have a scene where there was this like long jump to warp thing and they just kind of spiced it up so that it wasn't a lull.
yeah,
So I don't know. So, but Jason, this
yeah.
takes place. So the Pike that we know in Discovery season
Mm-hmm.
two,
Mm-hmm.
this takes place before that.
Yes, yes.
So,
Because
so the
as you
Pike that we
mentioned,
know, yeah.
because as you mentioned earlier, the Pike in Discovery, Venus shows up as a projection. Venus shows up in the
Oh,
Discovery
yeah,
episode. Yeah.
right.
And he goes,
Okay,
Vina. And yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. So. I wish I could remember. There is an Enterprise episode where there
Oh my
is
gosh.
a Vina. esque character, and I thought it was Vina, and
Oh
I
my
would have to
gosh,
dig around to
wow.
find it. Um, it's it was something that you called out at the time, and I mean, I don't remember specifically because it was like a throwaway episode. It was like a
Yeah.
one off little plot thing. I mean, when I'm looking online, I don't see anything that confirms that. So it must have just been like a thematic callback.
Okay,
But
okay.
yeah, there was a um something like that where there was like
My
a
memory is so bad with this one that like if you had said we met a Telosian in Enterprise, I was
yeah,
like, yeah, sure. Don't remember.
yeah. It might have just been a thematic callback.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, where Archer encountered like a projection lady who actually was already dead or something.
Okay, okay. And
Yeah,
that's not uncommon in the Star Trek universe. They have recycled, is recycled the right word? Yeah, I think recycled is the right word. Like similar like stories and themes and even characters. For sure.
sure. Yeah. Well, okay. Then the other callback was Rigel 7.
Yes,
I cannot figure out why I know that name.
because
Was
it's
it was
referenced a
it
lot.
in Discovery?
Yeah, and I think Enterprise too. I would not be surprised if it was referenced in Enterprise as well. Rigel 7 is one of those planets that you're like that they always talk about. Always.
Okay.
Like I don't think we ever get to go there, but it's always referenced as one of the, you know, the Tatooine or
Right.
the what's a planet in Star Wars that's always referenced but never that we never
Coruscant,
really. Yeah,
Tatooine.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It is one of those planets. It's like, oh yeah, there's a peace conference on Rigel 7, or there's
sure.
a trade thing going on Rigel 7, and
Sure.
as part of the
Mandalore.
dialogue. Right,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
right.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, but I dug pretty deep on Rigel 7 trying to find a reference in Enterprise. I could not find it. So
Okay.
I'm just gonna assume that early in season 2 of Discovery they talked about it
Yeah, I'm sure they
because
did.
as soon as they brought it up in this episode, I was like, oh, I know Rigel 7, but I was like,
Yeah,
I don't know how I know Rigel 7. But
yeah.
okay,
And we may have talked about, I may have brought it up, but who knows? Because it is one of those ubiquitous, planets that they reference all the time.
sure. Well, yeah, so I would give it
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I want to give it like in the 90s.
Oh,
So any disregarding any outdated societal
yeah.
issues, I'd give
The
it like a
women!
nine.
The
Yeah,
women!
I'd give it like a 90%.
I mean, Spock yelling, the women!
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd give it a
Sorry.
90%.
Nice.
How about you, buddy?
Nice. Yeah, again, similar. Like I said earlier, we've come home, and this gets a 4 pips. This is a captain's level
Nice.
episode for me. It's a classic. Uh, it is the progenitor, the genesis of another one of my favorite iterations of the franchise. It is a standalone episode, and you know, uh, I mean, a woman first officer in the 1960s. I mean, come on. yes, there's misogyny, and all that stuff, and I'm surprised they're not chain smoking,
Yeah, yeah.
like, uh, that kind of stuff, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's a fantastic episode. So much,
Very
as you
cool.
said, world building, uh, the science stuff, the tech stuff. Yeah,
A rare four pip from Jason.
yeah. And the thing is, and then it's the nostalgia thing, where it's like, oh yeah, this is gonna be cool. Like, I think you said it. You were talking about it. Like, I know it didn't. I know, as you said, it didn't air until 1988. Um,
Apparently.
but if it did like come out in the 60s, I mean, it's like, for me, I tried to go. Obviously, we weren't there, but you try to go back and you're like, wow, if this came across your screen compared to some of the other 1960s television, um, I kind of imagine it kind of being like Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band when it first came out. It was like Technicolor in a black and white world.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. So, um, well, was there anything else you want to talk about with this one?
Uh, no, I mean, I don't think we have to touch on, like, you know, the premise of it, like being in a cage, and, like, the experimentation and being held, and even in the most calm, relaxed setting. I think they hit it right on the head. Like, I don't think a lot of humans would be, well, no, you never know. Um, it's kind of the Matrix thing, right? It's kind of a Matrix
Yeah,
deal. So
right. Yeah, yeah.
I don't
I know
think
what you mean.
either of us would want to be held up in a cage in a fantasy land, even if it's the
Right,
most grand illusion
right.
and you have everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think there is a a human condition that is like the theme of this episode, where we would choose free will, we would choose freedom
Yeah,
over that utopia,
yeah,
because there's something about knowing that it's not real,
yeah, exactly,
and we would
exactly.
seek that authenticity over, this grand illusion.
Yeah, exactly. So
Says two guys with a podcast about a fantasy
yeah, absolutely,
universe.
absolutely, absolutely. But we still have to, yeah,
But we're not totally immersed in this. This is our break from reality. This is not
right,
our reality.
exactly, exactly,
So,
exactly, exactly.
okay, well, good deal. And
Yeah,
then we also have a Star Wars show in full swing, the
yes.
Skeleton Crew. We are both caught up. I kind of hated
So
episode
at the
4.
moment, hang on. So at the
Yeah,
moment, I just want to give our listeners,
yeah.
watchers, some context. At the moment of this recording, there are 4 episodes of the Skeleton Crew out. But go
Hmm.
ahead. So go ahead. Sorry.
Spoiler alerts.
Yeah. If you haven't
You
watched the
know,
fourth
you
episode,
know.
called "Can't Say
I
I
don't know.
Remember," no at Atten.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's
yeah,
what it was called.
yeah. I mean, the show is fine. It is getting all of the like Star Wars content creators are in love with it. I'm not gonna go
The
as far to
Easter eggs,
say,
I mean, the Easter eggs in it
yeah,
is just off the charts. I'm like, wow.
yeah,
But yeah.
off the charts. Yeah, I'm not gonna go as
Does that make up for the lack of, like, Jedi Sith, like, uh, does that make up for the lack of that kind of thing in this show? Because I mean, yeah, we get some droids and a pirate and some, but it's mostly teens, preteens, and then and some ships and some fate and some guns and some blasters. And but does that make up for the does that lack make does the Easter eggs and the references make up for the lack of all those things that I just said in your mind?
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought of it like that. Like to me, it was a insurance policy of like, how do we ensure that this is a Star Wars show? And so we cram
Right.
it full of Star Wars-ness.
Right.
Because otherwise you have Goonies in space.
Right. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or that show that you referenced before,
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things in space.
Yeah, in in
Yeah.
in a Star Wars universe, I guess.
Yeah. I yeah, I can't really decide if those things are purely there for longtime Star Wars fans to be like, ooh, I know what that is,
Right.
or if it's them recognizing that it is Goonies in space and with a Star Wars veneer and
Right.
and now you can't argue that it's not Star Wars because it's just chock full of thematic and um like dialogue
Huh.
Easter eggs calling back to previous movies. So I don't know. I so all of the Star Wars content creators are in love with it, and I won't go as far as to say that I don't get it, but it's just not for me.
Yeah.
But I am struggling because it's like these Star Wars like content creators I'm talking about. I mean, they're basically our age, and
Right.
so what the,
So
you
you're
know,
trying to discern the disconnect of like, am
yeah,
I missing something
yeah,
here? And I was gonna ask you that, and I'm like, because I watch it, I'm like,
it's
okay,
fine, right? It's just
Goonies in
fine.
space, great. It's
Yeah,
like Discovery in a lot of ways. In a
yeah,
lot of ways,
yeah,
it's familiar, but it doesn't hit for me, anyways.
yeah,
It doesn't hit. It's missing a. It's got a great harmony, but it doesn't have a great melody.
yeah.
If that music analogy
Right. That
rings
makes
true,
sense.
because I'm
Yeah.
like, it's missing something that I'm like, I don't get it.
I mean, I think for me, I don't care about the characters. I think that's what my hang up is.
Yeah, it's hard to get. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. These characters are just so like snotty, and I guess that's what we were
Yeah.
like as teens.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But I mean, it is possible to really connect with like in ET, like Elliot. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you,
yeah.
you care a lot about Elliot when you watch ET,
Yeah.
or that there's a lot of examples like that. So it is possible, but they created these characters as sort of like experts of their own domains, and it's just like the captain, she does have the moment at the end of episode 4 where she's like, I don't know what I'm doing, and she's crying. Like, but that
Yeah.
was the first time she let her guard down, and I'm glad they put that in, but I feel like I had already bailed on the premise at that point. It was too late,
Yeah.
where she just like full of ego and piss and vinegar, and it was just
Right,
like,
right, right. Yes.
this is like a 10-year-old. Like, I'm
Yeah.
supposed to believe that. So I don't know.
No, aren't they like 13, 14, 15 in that range?
Oh, I have no idea. Yeah,
Okay,
I have no
okay.
clue.
It feels like in that range of like the arrogant, like know-it-all teen, preteen kind of dealio, but I don't know.
No, yeah,
That's
I
the
think you're
only
right.
way that I can reconcile that in my mind. I'm like, okay, that's adorable if you're like 15 and you're
Yeah.
questioning why and you think you have all the answers.
Yeah, but like when you watch the Goonies, when they're being chased by the bad guys, and there's also the looming sort of like spookiness of the pirates and stuff, like you do feel like the kids are walking through a very dangerous
Oh,
setting, and
absolutely.
the stakes are very high.
Absolutely. Yes.
And like with these kids, they feel like they're invincible,
Yeah.
and nothing really truly impacts them.
Yeah.
That's
And
just like how it feels to me.
thank you for saying that because that is one of the defining characteristics of what makes the Goonies. And I just watched it a couple of years ago and it's still relatable. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh yeah, it's still relatable and it's still fun and it's still that's what makes in my mind that's what made the Goonies. And in this, as you're alluding to it, it's the Goonies, but it's also not because I don't think I could be wrong, but I'm like, I don't know if this to me like holds a candle even to the Goonies.
Yeah, I agree for sure. And then this like detour on this other planet that was one of these lost Old Republic jewels.
Hmm. At Akron, at
Yeah,
Akron, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I thought the whole I just I didn't care at all.
Do you think that's gonna play a role like in the future? Like it's it's right, like at Aten and at Akron, it's got to be something, right? Like something here in this, or do you think this is a one-off and we'll never
Well,
see
you,
these planets again?
well, you're gonna hate my answer. So one of my biggest sources of learning or catching Easter eggs that I missed
Yeah,
and getting theories about these shows,
yeah.
because every Star Wars show that comes out, they do full literally for this show. I think the first one they're like 111 Easter eggs from the first episode. Yeah. So,
What?
yeah.
Okay, okay, okay,
So it's a huge YouTube channel called Screen Crush.
okay.
And so again, you're gonna hate this answer, but they oh man, I don't even want to tell you.
No, come on. You can't dangle the bait
Yeah,
and not
well,
drop it in the water.
just so you know, I don't believe this. I don't buy
Okay,
it.
okay,
I've been
okay, okay,
burned too many times,
okay. My
and it's
soul is prepared, buddy. My
yeah. So
soul is prepared.
they're trying to solve the mystery of what is the great work at Atten, right?
Yeah,
So they're trying to draw these connections, like basically that they are, so everything's secretive, and they're
yeah,
all working on this great work, but it's a mystery what the great work is.
right.
And so their theory is that it is like cloning, and it's like figuring out how to clone Palpatine.
Kill me. No, come on. No. Oh, this again?
Oh
Oh, I
man.
want to cry. Oh, come on.
Yeah. So
No, no, but oh, my soul was not prepared. Oh, keep going.
somehow Palpatine returned.
Oh, come on. No, no. No. Okay. Settle. What
Okay.
do you think?
Hold on. So if anyone for some reason somebody watching this who hasn't followed along, Jason hates stuff like that.
And that
And
stuff. Oh.
man, as soon as Screen Crush brought that up, I was like, I cannot wait to tell Jason.
What did you think? Please, just yeah, go. What did you think
Yeah,
when you first
I
read
mean,
that? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I I the thing is, Jason, is that like every one of these shows, they always feel like they're going to go there or somewhere adjacent to that.
Yeah.
They never do. And whatever that piece of my brain is that's supposed to try to solve the puzzle has
Yeah.
just been beaten to a pulp
Yeah.
when it comes to Star Wars. And I just can't do it anymore. I just can't try to make sense of it because I would love to be like, ooh, maybe this is like maybe they're like okay, in Andor, they're in quote unquote jail, but
Yeah. In prison. Yeah.
they're actually building the Empire's um ATATs and stuff. You know what I mean? They're slave
And the
labor.
Death Star and the pieces of the Death
Yeah,
Star. Yeah.
right. Um and so I
Working
mean my
penal colony.
yeah, my
Yeah.
best guess would be something like that. Is that like perhaps they are a jumping off point for some larger movement and that accounts for the secrecy, but again, I've just been burned too many times where it's like, ooh, it's this big thing and then the show ends like with Acolyte, it gets canceled. I don't
Right.
even know what that show was now. I'm like um and I just feel like that's just kind of how it goes. So
Okay.
I just don't have it in me anymore to speculate on what's going on.
Okay.
I'm preparing for it to be absolutely nothing. I'm preparing for it to be like, hey, we have a bunch of gold and we don't want pirates to steal it, so we shut off from the world and
Oh, it's like the source of like Republic credits, the material
yeah,
for Republic credits or something.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And when I don't know if you remember the scroll from episode one, they say these outer rim planets are beyond the reach of
Oh, yeah.
this
Yeah.
like new republic.
Yeah.
And so they don't have protection way out there.
Yeah.
And so their only option is to go dark and just be
Right.
self-sustaining, shut out. They have a stockpile that they don't lose. So
Okay.
some huge, bigger meaning to the grand. But again, I've just been burned too many times. So
Okay. Fair enough.
yeah,
No, yeah, no, that's fair.
it's very ironic that Andor was the only one that delivered because the emerging empire at that point is imprisoning everybody,
Yeah.
and it turns out it was to ramp up the military production, like you said, a
Yeah,
penal
I
colony.
mean, it makes total sense. I mean, again, the creator and and the showrunner, I mean, they absolutely nail socio-political, you
Yeah,
know,
absolutely. But
stuff.
the reason I say it's ironic is because that show doesn't give a shit about any of these like theories and all that stuff, like the Palpatine
Yeah.
return stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the only one that delivered on something like that, even
Yeah.
though it wasn't like some huge reveal or whatever, but just the way the characters experience it.
Okay.
Um, they go from complacent because complacent to survive. Hey, just follow the
Yes.
rules. We'll be okay if you just follow the rules. And then it
Yeah.
dawns on them like, no, the only option is rebellion.
Yeah.
Like there's no degree of compliance that's going to get us better treatment.
Right. 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 Because they do offer like a little hope. Like you're
Yeah,
gonna get out, but you
right,
don't. And you're like,
right.
oh, that's the cruelest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So you don't think this is like these are old Jedi planets that are
well, I mean, the fact that they said the Old Republic, they're
true?
from the Old Republic, sure. I mean, I guess they would have to have something to do with Jedi, but again, I don't want to say like, oh, there is a Jedi temple buried beneath, and yeah,
So if it does turn out and the screen crunch crush
yeah, Screen
YouTuber
Crush,
screen
yeah.
crush person is right, how would you react? How do you react to that? Like you've watched, you know, we'll probably, I mean, there's only four more episodes, eight total.
Mhm.
Like, how would that be? How would that settle with you if you're like, oh. Last scene, it's uh,
Yeah, I mean,
you
like
know,
think about how dark that would be because this show is all about getting home. It's
yeah,
all about, you know, they're trying to get home. And like, so
right,
how tragic would it be if home is not home? It's some sinister machine to serve some horrible purpose. Um, would Disney go there? Would they ruin these kids' idyllic, childhoods and
yeah.
their perception of home? And I don't know. I don't think they would. Yeah.
So you don't think at the end?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So who knows? Again,
Yeah.
I've given up. I've given up on Star Wars theorizing. So
Okay. 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 Okay.
I don't think I've ever been right about a theory with
Okay.
Star Wars.
Okay.
So yeah.
The only thing I'll say, so like because it's like hidden, erased, this at Aten. The only
Mhm.
thing that I will say is that my original like thought was that it's not it is not it was not the cloning thing of the Empire, but it is a um it is a planet that is idyllic, and I'm trying to remember the movie, but it's idyllic on its like on the face of it,
Sure.
but like the dad, uh oh crap, what's his name? But anyways, the dad and the town supervisor or whatever are
Mhm.
actually like remnant
First Order.
imperial officers and part of the first order. Yeah. Like the beginning of the first order. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was I'm like, oh, this is gonna turn like, is it Smallville or I don't know what show, but anyway, or what movie that I'm thinking of, but it's like this idyllic town, but really it's they're serving the empire, the first order, the last
Yeah.
remnants of the empire, the beginning of the first order.
Right. I think I think there's a lot of pieces there with the droids, being so authoritative, and there's
Yeah.
very, very like strictly enforced societal rules.
Yeah.
Whatever the great work is, and they're protecting the great work. It is very like what you're saying. but again, I just can't imagine them taking this show there. It seems like the wrong forum for
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I get that. I could totally see that Disney. Yeah, no, I could totally see that's not where Disney's going to take this, and it's going to be much more lighthearted. That's why I thought maybe a Jedi, like,
Sure, a temple.
yeah, this is the Jedi Temple or something. And
Yeah,
the three planets align, and you get Captain Planet, or the original Jedi, whatever.
yeah, yeah. I mean, great. I hope something cool happens. I am
Yeah.
interested to see what happens with Jude Law's character. First time we met him, he appeared to be using the Force, and now he seems just kind of a bumbling fool. I can't.
Yeah, kind of an
And
idiot. Kind
yeah,
of an idiot. Although, as you mentioned before, that could be a double bluff. Like that he is
yeah,
actually,
yeah. This
yeah.
show, or I'm sorry, that this universe likes to do that misdirection, like with Yoda pretending to just be like an old hermit when he meets Luke, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Palpatine pretending to be like a senator of a failing planet when really he's this powerful Sith Lord,
Right.
you know. So, um, and then Jude Law emerged from that battle. He claimed that he bought them off, but maybe he used some sort of force trick to kill them all. I don't know, but his. So I watched it with my daughter, and she was like,
Yeah, what
"There's
does Elle say?
multiple times when she goes, wait, I thought he was a bad guy," and so like from the mouth of babes, right? Because I think it shows how inconsistent they're treating the character. Like one minute you don't trust him at all. At
Yeah.
the end of this episode, literally the kids run up to him and hug him,
Yeah.
but then they're like, "Oh wait, you stole our credits. Never mind. We don't like you." Like, and so you could take that as him being very sly and deceptive, but it's
Yes.
also just weird writing. And um I hope they button it up in a satisfying way, but as of now it's like I don't know what's going on with that character.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. And that's probably what they're going after. You know, they're trying to misdirect you and go,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So um okay, well, good deal.
Yeah.
We've gone long in this one.
Yeah.
So
Hey, I mean,
everybody,
we got to give the people what they want. I mean, they want, they get bonus content
yeah,
when we
exactly.
hit Star Wars.
Exactly.
And then I watched the episode.
Yeah, nicely done. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to us on YouTube if you like this. Follow us wherever you get podcasts, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much. And thank you, Jason.
Thank you. And thank you to our listeners, viewers, watchers,
Next
all
stop,
that
Strange New
stuff.
Worlds.
Strange New Worlds.
Can't wait.
To
All right.
boldly go. I mean, to boldly go, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So until next time, live long and prosper.
And may the force be with you.
See ya.